All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College Application and Website Development, or AWD program, and in particular the AWD1100 C# programming class, I've had students come up to me telling me that they're still struggling with certain problems or having problems in the class. So I've decided to go back and basically I'm doing a perpetual payroll program where I'm trying to incorporate stuff from each chapter in and keep upgrading it and upgrading it. Now, I just did chapter 4, so why am I still on chapter 4? Because there's a few things in here that I said I wasn't going to put in until chapter 5. So I'm going to, for lack of better words, make myself a little list. I'm just going to put it up here in Notepad. So number 1 will be local versus global variables. And number 2, just keep going here as I find different things. I did go through in the last chapter the plus. All right, plus we did a multiplication, and we did just a plus with string concatenation, so we've looked at some of that. We also did a plus equal where we added the gross pay onto our total gross pay. And let's see. There's no casting to be done, nothing in the math class. With strings, I did add some concatenation. I concatenated together basically everything I've been doing so far and put it into a message box. And I included the \n in there. I didn't put any \t's in. We could have done that as well. But what I told you I was going to start doing then was to start converting data types. So now we're going to start to bring in some data validation. All right, I'm going to put in, we'll do the try parse. And first, you know what? We'll do this twice, I guess. We'll do it first with just the convert dot to double to etc. to decimal, etc. And then we'll go back and we'll use the try parse just so you can see them both. So let me put that in there. Convert dot to decimal, try parse. And that whole thing together will represent us doing what's typically referred to as data validation. So I don't know if I've missed anything else. I did show you the converting to currency, plus I converted to floating point with 2 decimal places, so you've seen that. We will look at scope, and that again has to do something with local versus global, so I've already put that in. I don't think that now is the time for any enumeration, so I'm not planning on using any of those. And I showed you the null coalescing and the problems that you can have with that. So let's see. And I don't think there's anything else in here. Yeah. So that jumps us up into chapter 5. So not only in this chapter do I want to go over Boolean expressions, conditionals, loops, etc. Not only do I want to do that, but I want to make sure that I also put in the stuff that I just mentioned. That being local versus global variables and the convert to decimal and the try parse. So let me do this. All right. I'm going to bring up my program for chapter 5. And I'm just going to add this as another comment in here. So I've got both of those. So one thing that we'll want to do in here is we're also, boy, how do I do this? The next chapter, chapter 6, is going to be on modularization. So what I'll do is I'll still do everything basically inside of my calculate routine. All right. So my calculate routine is going to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger in my button, but we'll break that out when we get into the next chapter. Okay. So the local versus global variables, I've kind of shown you that already because these are global variables, meaning we don't have to pass them from routine to routine. But if I wanted to be able to use these, and you'll see these more in the next chapter, we will pass those on to different routines. So you'll see the local versus global. All right, and I guess we already did do the convert dot to decimal. So we've already got that in there. The problem is, what if it fails? So in other words, if I run the program right now, and I come in here and I put in my name, and let's just say I leave hours worked empty. I'm purposely going to leave it empty. Well, I get an error message. Input string was not in the correct format because it's attempting to take an empty string and convert it into a decimal, and it can't do that. All right. So there's different ways of actually handling this. Now, I have shown the class in other chapters kind of how I do it, so I'm just going to steal some of that code. All right. Let's see. I come in and I usually create something that I call, of course, I'd have to pick one that I didn't do it in. Let's see. Payroll. This one will have it. I usually write a routine that I call validate is numeric. So that's the one that I'm going to use here. So let me grab that. It's a very short routine right here. This is all of it. All right. And let me put it in, and then we'll go over how it's used. All right. So right down below this, I'm going to add that, and that is I'm going to put it right here. And what this is going to do is I'm going to pass something into it. And if what I pass into it is not numeric, this will return false. If what I pass into it is numeric, it'll return true. Now, it'll be a decimal.try-parse because I'm going to be passing in hours worked or hourly rate, one or the other. Since I made that decimal, this has to be a decimal. All right, that should get rid of the errors, and they're gone. So now the thing is, right now, it tries to do this every time, even when it's, for lack of better words, bad. So I'm going to add some code in here. And this will also allow us to start adding in if statements. So I'm going to add, and you've seen this before in virtually all of my programs, I'm going to add a Boolean that I like to just call keep going. You don't like my name? Hey, feel free to use your own. It doesn't really and truly doesn't matter. And I'm going to set that equal to true, meaning I want to keep going. And I'm going to call that my program continue flag. Booleans are oftentimes referred to as flags, just so you know that. All right, so I'm going to come in here and say if keep going. And since it's set to true up there, I'm going to keep going. So rather than doing this conversion, I'm not going to do it yet. Instead, I'm going to say keep going equals validate is numeric, and I'm going to pass into that text box hours worked dot text. Now let's try to put this into English, what's going on in here. Let's put it in as a comment. Verify that whatever was entered into the hours worked text box was indeed numeric. All right. So if keep going returns true, boom, it was numeric. If keep going was false, was not numeric. All right. So if I get down to here, and right now, for some reason, if this was set to false, I don't want to go on. It should never be set to false, but if it was, I'm just going to say else, and I'm going to tell it to return. I'm done. All right, but if I get to here, this is going to validate that that field is numeric. If that field was numeric, then keep going is still going to be set equal to true. So what do we know here? All right, we know that the hours worked text box has a value in it that indeed is numeric. All right, we're still not sure that it's a valid value, but we know that it's numeric. So that means that we can come in and convert it. So now we can convert hours worked because it will not fail. But we're not done yet because we still have to verify that what we put in there was within range. All right. So I'm going to say keep going equal validate range. And I'm going to pass into it now hours worked. Now I'm going to get an error message because I haven't written validate range yet. And that's fine. We'll write that in a moment. If keep going here, if this is false, all right, so if keep going is false, this means we know that the hours worked text box holds either no value at all or a non-numeric value, one or the other. So if it's non-numeric or whatever, we're going to print out an associated message box and return. In this case, quit the routine. Okay, so if that's the case, I'm going to again steal from one of my older programs in here. Did I keep that one open before? I did not. Let's see if I have it in here. Yes, I do. I like to, if possible, be able to write one kind of generic routine to handle most of my error messages. And that's what I'm going to do down here. See, this is already getting fairly big in size. It's upwards of 200 lines. So this is just called print message box. And the way I'm going to use that is up here. I'm going to call print message box. And the message that I'm going to give it is hours worked either empty or non-numeric. And then I'm going to say please re-enter a valid value now. Something like that. I mean, it's not great, but it's totally fine. All right, and this is going to say non-numeric input. Okay, so that's going to call that. So now I've handled that, but I've got to write this routine. validate range. And I'm passing in hours worked. All right. And really, there's two different ranges that I want to validate. I want to validate either the hours range, the hours worked, or the hourly rate. So here, let's call this validate hours worked range. Okay. We'll put that underneath the validate numeric. And I'll have this routine attempts to validate whether the hours worked was valid or not, i.e. is between 0 and 84. All right, which are our constants, which are min hours and max hours. I think that's what I call them, but I want to come up here and check. Min hours and max hours. Good. So it's a very simple routine. As soon as I can find it. There it is. So private bool, and we're passing in here a decimal, which is the hours worked. Now I'm getting this because I haven't returned anything yet. We will return something in a minute. So if hours worked is less than the min hours, or hours worked is greater than the max hours, well, we know that we put in something illegal. Return false because it's not valid. Return true. Now this should go away. There we go. And I'm going to quickly grab this. I'm going to copy every stinking bit of this. I'm going to paste it in. I'm going to have it in again. Why? Because this one won't be, this will be validate hourly rate range. And this will be HR for hourly rate. This will be an HR. And this will be min rate and max rate. And I got to change my comment as well. And that's the max rate is between 0 and 99.99, which was min rate. Whoops. And max rate. Oops. Okay. Hourly rate, rate, good. All right, so that one's also done now. Now, you can see how big our button calculate click is getting. In the next chapter, or in the next lesson here that we do, we'll start modularizing this. So, and here we want to print out the message box and we want to return. Okay. So now, if keep going, well, what do we know? We know we have an hours worked value inputted that was between 0 and 84. In other words, between min hours and max hours. Now attempt to validate, we'll do that in a minute. First thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the hourly rate. So we're going to convert hourly rate to decimal, and now we're going to attempt to validate the contents of the hourly rate text box. We want to do that before we do this. So just like we did up here where we said keep going equal validate is numeric for this, now we've got to validate that this one was numeric. Just like that. Okay. Now, if this was not true, this means we did not input a value that was within range. So let me do the else on here. Else we know that the hours worked, it holds a value that is out of range. Either greater than, either less than 0 or greater than 84. Again, min hours and max hours. So print out, again, an associated message box. Same exact thing that we've done previously. And return, otherwise quit the program here. So what's going to change here is the message. So it's going to say hours worked inputted was out of range. And this will change to out of range input. Now what I should be doing, and I'm not doing, is writing some code and testing it, writing some more code and testing it. I don't have any errors, so let's see if at least the hours stuff works. If I put in nothing for the hours and I click calculate, hours worked either empty or non-numeric. Well, it didn't take, I should have put a \n there. Please re-enter a valid value now. Okay, I also got to reset it back to here, but that's fine. Out of range. Well, that's the wrong error. It shouldn't say non-numeric. Oh, it's the hours still. I'm doing the wrong thing here. So let me go back and do this. All right, so this is hours worked. That's non-numeric, so that is correct. Now let's put in something that's out of range. Out of range. So that's correct. Let's do out of range on the other side. Good. And let's put in something. All right, so all that's now being handled. I do want to make a couple changes in here. So we'll do that in just a second. Let me clear this and exit. All right. So this should have had a \n here. And a \n here. And I think that was it. All right. Oh, other than if we do the message box here, we want to clear out what's in. So we want to say text box hourly hours worked rather dot text equals double quote and text box hours worked dot focus. Then return. And we want to do the same thing down here. Now, we should be partway home here. In other words, Now I come in here, put in my name, nothing. Hours worked either empty or non-numeric. Please re-enter a value, and there I am. So if I put in this, I should get the same thing, and that should clear, and there's my cursor. If I put in something out of range, this was 0 to 84, so let's try 84.1. Out of range, please enter a valid value now, and let's try -1. Great. So all of our stuff for our hours worked, it's now all working. That's terrific. And we're going to basically parrot this or do virtually the same thing, but now we're going to be doing it in here once we get down with our hourly rate. So let me grab this. I don't want that there anymore. X. All right. So if keep going. So if keep going here is true, what do we know? We know that we entered a number. We don't know if there was a number within range, but we know we entered a number. So again, I'm going to be able to do a bunch of copying here as we're going on. So we know that the hourly rate text box was a value, has a value in it that is indeed numeric. So we convert it just like we did before, where we did that up here. Okay, I'm not going to keep putting in the names of the constants, but now I want to do the same thing in here. Virtually the same thing, but I want to validate that it's within range. Now it's between 0 and 99.99. And I don't want to validate hours worked here. I want to validate hourly rate, and I want to pass in the hourly rate. Okay. Now, if we had validate hourly rate, isn't that what I called it down here when I copied it? Validate hours. Oh, it's hourly rate range. I bet. Yes, it is. Is that one called range? Yep. Validate hours worked range. Validate hourly rate range. Okay. There we go. So that's all done. Now, if this did not return true, so if this is an else, again, I'm going to steal some code from what I had up above and just modify it a little bit. Where is that? I'm just going to do this. So if we get down to here, we know that the hourly rate text box holds a value that is either empty or non-numeric. So as before, we will print out an associated message box and return. Very similar to what we did before, but except this will say hourly rate. Inputted was empty or non-numeric. This will say non-numeric as well. And this will be hourly rate. And this will be hourly rate. Now, I should be able to come in here I've already tested these, so I tested the hours worked. So I'm just going to put in 40, but I'm going to leave this blank and see if it catches my error. Not numeric. That's good. That's exactly what I want to have happen. All right, so doing well. I know I'm getting up there time-wise. I'm up 30 minutes already, so this will be close to an hour, probably, possibly, by the time I finish. So if I get down here, if I do another if keep going, then, again, I'm going to steal some of the code from above. I know it's numeric. All right, if keep going is still true. We know that it is indeed numeric, so we can do all this. Where is that? We've already done that. So, looking in here, it's taking it from the top. Here, if keep going, and it will be, so we want to validate that what was in the hours worked text box is numeric. If for some reason keep going was false, we're just going to return. All right. If this is true, that means that whatever we put into hours worked was indeed numeric, so we can now convert it to a decimal, and we can validate that it's within range. If we hit the else here, then this if was false, so we know what we put in was non-numeric or empty. So we're going to put in a message, clear it out, and return. If we get down to here, we know that the hours work value we put in was valid. Okay, so now we want to attempt to validate the hourly rate. Okay, if this was false up here, we didn't put in a value that was in range, so we're going to do an out of range message, and again clear and return. So once we return from here, we're really returning from there. So if this was true, what we put in was numeric, so we can convert it, and we can check to make sure it was within range. If this returned false, it was either empty or non-numeric. So we're saying hourly rate was empty or non-numeric. We clear it, and we return. Okay, so now we come here. And if keep going was indeed true, then we know we put in a number that was within range. Okay? Range. Okay, so if we get down to here, if this is true, we know that we have an hours work value inputted that was between this. We also know that we have an hourly rate value inputted that was between 0 and 99.99, in other words, min rate and max rate. So increment counters, increment total employees counter. So I'm going to say we have a valid employee. Now, one thing I'm not checking, and we still could check for this, and that is to make sure we've got something put into the first name and the last name. We're not doing that right now. All right, we can go back, but this program is already getting almost unwieldy, and it's already up near 300 lines already. All right, so I'm just going to assume that a value was put in there. All right, I'm already breaking it up into modules too, as you can see. But in the next, what I will do in the next chapter, more than anything else, is I'm going to grab the, I'm going to take what's in the calculate button, all this code that you see in here, and break it out into individual routines. All right, and I want, what I really want to have happen is I want the click routine for the calculate button to act almost like as a driver for the button. Okay. So that was valid and that was valid. So increment the employees counter. So plus plus total employees. And I'm going to do it there. I think I did it down below as well. I thought we had it in here someplace. Well, let's check. Let's check for plus plus. Okay, so it's in two different places. Oh, I already had it right there. So yep, I can do this as well. Delete. And I can now calculate the gross pay, which is going to take a little bit more time. So I'm going to call calculate gross pay, and I'm going to pass in the hours worked and the hourly rate. I'm getting an error because the routine has not been written yet. We'll write that in a moment. After I do that, I'm going to do exactly what I have here. So all of this information that's here is going to be put into here. All right, so the only one that's I've got to do yet is to calculate the gross pay. All right. Private void calculate gross pay, and I'm putting in a decimal. That's the hours worked, and a decimal, that's the hourly rate. Make sure I call that the right thing. So that error, there it is, calculate gross pay. Okay, so this is really all I have left to do in here, is to actually calculate the gross pay. So that's in here. I'm just going to put for now, this method actually calculates the employee's gross pay. It does take into account whether or not the employee has worked overtime. Okay, so if hours worked, HW, if it's less than or equal to the max non-OT hours, what do we know? Okay, well, we basically know employee worked less than or equal to 40 hours, no overtime. All right, so their gross pay is just, oh, and I've got to pass gross pay into this too. fact, why don't we do this? We'll say gross pay equals. Okay, and this will then mean that this will have to return, instead of it being a void, it'll have to return a decimal. All right, and we'll just create a variable right here, a decimal, that's called gross, and we'll set it equal to 0.0m. Okay, so if they work no overtime, the gross is just a straight time, the hours worked times the hourly rate. Else, well, otherwise, what do we know? Employee, why am I getting, employee worked greater than 40 hours, has OT coming. Should be an S, and we'll put coming over here too. All right. So if that's the case, what do we know? Well, let's think about this for a second. Let me check my time. Yeah, got plenty of time because I want to keep this an hour or less. Let's suppose that the employee, so I'm going to put a comment in here. We're going to pretend for a minute that the employee worked 50 hours. Okay? So the way we're going to pay them is as the following. They're going to be 40 hours times their hourly rate, and then we'll have to add to that 10 hours times their hourly rate times their overtime rate. So in other words, for 50 hours right here, it should be, their gross should be equal to 40 times their hourly rate plus their hours worked minus 40 times their hourly rate times their overtime rate. Okay, so it should be that combination. And I'll tell you what, good, bad, indifferent, I don't know, but I'm going to even leave that in here. Okay, so now the employee, they've got overtime coming, so it's 40 hours times their hourly rate. Well, we've already got a variable that represents 40 hours, and that is max non-OT. We want that times their hourly rate. And we want to add to that, so plus, so that's their straight time. Straight time pay for first 40 hours worked. So we're adding to that then. So we've got this handled. But we want this. So that's going to end up being their their hours worked minus those 40 hours, max non-OT. All right, so that's handling this part. Okay, then we want to add to that this part. So their hours worked and this will be times their hourly rate times their overtime rate. Now, could I have done this wrong? Of course I could have. All right, if you've looked at enough of my lectures, you know I make more than my share of mistakes. But I think this is going to be okay. So let me do this. I'm going to put paren around the whole thing. That'll handle this, this, and this. Paren here, 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 here. I think one more paren might do it. 1. So it's telling me I don't need this and I don't need this. So those two to go together, these two go together. Plus, I do want one here. And I don't think I need one here. Now, it might be giving me that error because I've got this comment in here. So I'm going to get rid of the comment. In fact, I'm going to put everything all on the same line. All right, I'm going to put a paren around the whole thing. In fact, what's wrong? Well, gross equals, that would sure help, wouldn't it? And there was my error. But I'm going to put parens around the entire shebang here. Like that. All right, now hopefully I didn't make any mistakes. Again, we're up close to 300 lines right now. And it'll be even bigger in just a minute. So this is what? Oh, I've got to return the gross pay when I'm done too. So return gross. Now, if everything's working, it should be seamless and work exactly like it did before. So let's first start it by checking out and double checking and make sure that when we put nothing in here or out of range in here and in here, they all work. So hours worked empty or non-numeric, please enter a valid value. Non-numeric, please enter a valid value. The minimum, let's put a negative 0.1. Out of range, okay, please enter a valid value. And the max was 84, so let's try 84.1. Okay, all of those work. So let's try 50. Now we'll get the same stuff for our hourly rate. Hourly rate was empty or non-numeric. Hourly rate was empty or non-numeric. 0 was again our low point, so 0.1. This should be an out of range. Well, we can't handle that. So there's a mistake. Let's try it with $20 here and see if this gives me 1100 here. Right there, I did calculate overtime correctly, and it did. See that? So the only thing that looked wrong was if we've got a bad hourly rate. For some reason, that's not being checked right now. That's why you should write a little, check it, write a little more, and check it. So I didn't do that. Now I'm suffering the consequences. So this was the hourly rate. If the hours work, yeah. Private pool, hourly rate, private pool, hourly rate. Return true, hourly rate, that's all correct. We didn't have an if down here, or an else rather. That's an else, we need that else. And if this was the case, the hourly rate inputted was out of range, i.e. either it was less than 0 or greater than 99.99. So print out an associated error message, clear out associated fields, and return. That's all I'm going to put. That's totally fine. So I'm just going to grab this. This will bop us up over 300, I bet. Yes, it did. All right. So this was this has got to be changed to out of range. And this will have to say out of range input. All right, let's save it, run it again. So Jeff, Scott, 40. Try it again with out of range and see now if it's catching our errors. No, it is not. So there's still an error in there. I have to fix that. Let's do that right now. So one thing about this, I have no notes. I'm doing all this in real time, which I enjoy. Should be right here. Keep going, return true. I want to do all this stuff. If it returned false, I want to come in here, out of range, hourly rate inputted was out of range, and I want to clear it. For some reason that did not work. I don't think it worked at least. First, let's make sure that it handles 50, 20, 1100. That's correct, 1 in 1100. Let's try one with no OT. So 40, 30, that should be 1200, 2 and 2300. Okay, that's all working. Clear. Let's try it one more time. So this should handle no input and hours worked. It does. It should handle non-numeric. It does. It should handle out of range. And it does. And out of range this way. And it does. All right. That handles non-numeric. Good. And non-numeric. Good. But right here, if I put in -7, okay, that's out of range. That's good. And let's put in 100, which should also be out of range. That's good. All right. So let's say the person maxed out here. So they worked 84 hours and they made $99.99. I don't know what this is going to be. I've never calculated that. So they made $10,598.94. It appears as though right now everything that's in here is working. You can already see that when you combine together, and there's that, when you combine together all of the comments that I'm putting in here to try to help people understand what's going on, along with the fact that I still have much of my code in my calculate button, I'm already at 307 lines of code. Okay. Now, that said, I'm going to do a couple things here because I'm just about finished and I'm at 53 minutes, and that's good then. I'm going to get ready for my next one, my Chapter 6, which I'm going to do tomorrow, by copying this and pasting. So that'll be a 6. This will be a 6. All right, I'm going to come back into here. Whoops, I guess I closed it. I didn't think I did. Let's open up our payroll. All right, I'm going to close this and this. Right mouse click on here, add existing project, payroll, Chapter 6 Windows Forms, Chapter 6 here. Okay, come in here. You've seen me do this before. So again, make my changes in here, such as this will now be called Form Payroll 06. This will now In the label, we'll have a 6 in here. And finally, again, so I can differentiate between these, I'm going to again change the color. Looks like we're going to green now. So when I come back, which will be tomorrow, I want to do 6 and 7 ideally tomorrow. So let me do a save all. And tomorrow then when I come back, I'm going to be going over Chapter 5. I mean, what did we do in here and what didn't we do? How about that? We covered relational operators. We covered logical operators. The relational operators greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and not equal to. We covered those. Did we do any logical operators? We did some anding and oring a little bit, so yes. We did the if-else. I did put a switch in here. We can try that later. And right now, at least, there was no need for looping. You'll find, in my opinion, maybe we'll go back and we'll rewrite the original program that we did as a console. We'll rewrite this as a console updated, and we'll put in some loops so that you can see that. Okay? So, yeah, oh, good, it's back. Is this too much? Okay. But we're going to go over Chapter 6 next, and then Chapter 7. So in Chapter 6, we are going to talk about methods and event handlers. So I'm going to, more than anything else, I'm going to take all that code that I put inline in the button routines, and I'm going to move it out, and the buttons are going to act as mini drivers. Okay, so my code will probably actually be a little bit bigger, but it'll be much more modular. All right, so we're going to do that. I've already started the modularization way of doing things. And after we get done with that, we're going to go over Chapter 7, and we'll put some code in there, and we'll talk about exception handling. All right, then what I would like to do, and this won't be for another week or so, but I would like to go in and make some changes to this so we can work with an array. And we'll start with an array where we'll basically put in information for about 5 different employees. But then I'd like to work with an array list where we can add and delete employees. So we'll be adding more information as we get into that. We may even have to add additional forms. I know that when we get into the object-oriented stuff in Chapter 12 of our text, so when we get down to here, we will definitely have extra forms. But I'd like to, hopefully, I'll be able to do like one program for 6, one program for 7. These are iterations of the payroll program, one for 8, and I might combine 9, 10, and 11 into just one program. And then we'll break these up as well as we get into that, get into there. All right, hopefully you're getting something out of this. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at jpscott@rankin.edu. Otherwise, I'll see you soon.